Hey there, Claire Cantro here with Spread the Well. I wanted to kind of pick back up where we left off in the stretch videos and talk about or go a little bit deeper with the patients who, or the individuals who actually would benefit from stretching, specifically in the form of low load, long duration holds, okay? The interesting thing here is that it is not that clear cut. It's not always that simple and easy. And what I mean is when our body is giving us some indication that we feel tense, and of course with all of the narratives that we've had for our entire life, the belief is if I feel tight, I should stretch it. That there's a couple of different reasons why our muscles get tight or feel tight or we feel the need to stretch them. One is actually true connective tissue shortening. Okay, so the example would be the person who sits at their desk all day, every day. Certainly their hamstring length is going to shorten. Their hip flexors are going to shorten. That's a classic, perfect example of over time that myofascial tissue starts to kind of shorten, okay? And would potentially benefit from a lengthening type thing. More often than not, though, our muscles feel tight and thus we feel the need to stretch them due to some nervous system protective response. Okay, so we have lots of different muscles in our body, but for the sake of this example, picture that our body has two different muscle systems, okay, that are in kind of a constant, not battle, but opposition of each other. Okay, one system is designed to be protective. Okay. This is the big dominant, the muscle systems that turn on when we need to fight or run or, so they're these bigger protective muscles, okay? Then on the other side, the other system is our postural stabilizing system, okay? So this is the less dominant. This is the one that holds us upright and for long periods of time. This is the one that the core muscles and every aspect of our body, they're the ones that kind of fine-tune movement patterns and stuff. So those kind of support the big movers, right? To create positive movement patterns and good posturing and all of that stuff. When our body and when our nervous system interprets something in our environment as threatening, okay, so that's either the external environment, things around us, it could be physical stressors, mental and emotional stressors, something within us like an inflammatory response or whatnot, our nervous system right off the bat goes into a more protective mode. Okay, the goal is survival, the goal is safety. So it's going to ramp up our nervous system, our stress response to whatever that threat is, to satisfy the need, to do something about it, to change, to fight, to fly, whatever, and then get us kind of back down to baseline. The first dominant muscle system in response to threat turns on, okay? This is the muscle system that pulls us into fetal position, okay? It's all of the muscles that we always want to stretch. It's always the muscles that are always too tight, right? So let's think about it, okay? The upper traps, right? The pecs that pull us forward. The hamstrings that pull us into the hip flexors that pull us into fetal position. The hamstrings. So all of the muscles that are designed to pull us into that very kind of innate, guarded, protective posturing, fetal position, that's that dominant system. So when our nervous system is telling that dominant system, hey, we got to protect, that system's going to turn on and you're going to feel the need to stretch those muscles. The problem with that is that those muscles do not respond favorably to stretches, myofascial or otherwise, okay? Because if the nervous system interprets that you're trying to take that muscle and you're trying to pull it and create lengthening, the only thing that's going to happen is that's going to be interpreted as another threat and the protective response is going to kick on even more, okay? So we can do a lot of, I don't want to say damage, but we can create a lot more problems by trying to stretch a muscle that just needs to be calmed and through a calming of our nervous system, in other ways. So now that's not to say that some muscles, the perfect example is the hip flexors, that are going to have both of those components at play. Everything we do is in a seated position or is in a hip flex position. Same thing with the hamstrings. 9 times out of 10, the connective tissue aspect of our hamstrings and our hip flexors are going to be shortened. They are also, specifically the iliopsoas, they're also the first muscles to kick on in a threat response, okay? So I'm never going to give a patient a hip flexor stretch without teaching them how to kind of offset and downregulate that nervous system protective response, okay? So there's a technique in the world, it's lots of different names in the therapy world, contract relax or PNF or all these things. But the idea is that if a muscle, the way the muscle is designed is if I get a contraction of that muscle, okay, and then I have that muscle relax, there's like a split second, there's a period of time where the muscle spindle has to reset before it can contract again. So what we can do is we can take advantage of that moment and create a little lengthening of that connective tissue. Okay, so I'm going to give you an example using the hip flexor and kind of saying to patients, so if I'm giving a person a hip flexor stretch, it's never just going to be a static myofascial, even a low, long duration, without me first also teaching them about kind of that little nervous system trickery response, getting them to first release, maybe with a trigger point release, their iliopsoas, and other ways as well. So here's the technique that I give for hip flexor strengthening, for lengthening, and I'll do this on the left side. So the other thing that's super interesting is the hip flexor and the quads are part of what we call our front body, okay? So they're myofascially all connected with each other. And so a lot of times when you're going to try to stretch a specific muscle, it's near impossible to do that. And I would not even recommend that. I would encourage you to stretch groups or, front body versus back body. So just, myofascial connected musculature is what you should be targeting. But a lot of times the quads may be fine in length, but the hip flexors or the deeper iliopsoas are the things that are tight. So to isolate the hip flexors as opposed to the entire front body or even specifically the quad, we do this by adding either a foam roller or taking a towel roll to prop the leg on, okay? So I'm gonna lay on my belly. I'm gonna take probably about mid-thigh and I'm gonna prop my leg mid-thigh, just like that, okay? Also have just a handy stretch out strap, okay? And I'm gonna loop that onto my foot. Well, maybe I was. Okay, so if I was not propped on this foam roller, okay, and I'm trying to show you, I'm kind of carrying, at an angle here so you can see it. If I was not propped on this foam roller and I would just be pulling here, I would get a pull in my quadriceps much more than I would feel it up higher in my hip flexor, okay? So I want you to even try this at home and see what I mean. Like if you do just the simple kind of quad or front body stretch without a foam roller or without a towel roll, and then prop your leg up and see how it changes where you feel that tension, okay? So what I'm gonna do, instead of just sitting here and cranking on, my hip flexor, I'm actually first, what I'm doing, I have no tension in this, but my leg is bent, and I'm going to press isometrically. So I am pushing my thigh and knee down into the foam roller, because what that's doing is it's activating my hip flexor. So if I was standing up, it would look like I was marching, okay? So I am pressing down into the foam roller, and I'm gonna hold that for about 5 seconds, okay? And then the moment I relax, then I'm gonna pull. And then I'm gonna let my body kind of sink into that, okay? And then I'm gonna keep it at that new range, right? I'm gonna hold tension. I'm not trying to rip things. I'm just holding a good amount of tension. And I'm going to do that same thing again. I'm going to press down, activating my hip flexor. Okay, again, if I were standing up, it would look like I was marching. And then relax, and I'm going to take up the slack. Okay, so that's a key for these bigger dominant muscle systems that are almost always being told, because we live in a world where we're constantly in a threat response, and and we have to distinguish between those muscles being just purely connective tissue short, and in that case, we're doing nice low load, long duration stretches, or is there some nervous system component to it that I have to kind of play around with? I mean, other things that we can do to turn off that overly dominant protective response is any kind of nervous system calming activities. So all of the stress management, self-care stuff that you do, any vagus nerve stimulation, all of that stuff can even turn off that big dominant protective response. But one thing I'll say too, and this is probably one of the most frustrating things as a practitioner, is, we're still in this model where the physician, the hierarchy is that the physician is on top, and it's still who we go to first in situations. I understand it. It's our history. But when a person who is in pain because of some recent injury, and that injury created some really hyperprotective response, because that is exactly what the body is supposed to do, and we go straight into our orthopedist office, and orthopedists are amazing, but they know surgery and they know medicine, and they walk out with, if nothing shows up on imaging, they walk out with a diagnosis of a strain or sprain, whatnot, and they're handed stretches, a few stretches to do. This will help. No, it will not. It will never help. I assure you, when you are in an acute flare-up of any kind, stretches will not help. So if you're a physician listening to this, please stop doing that. If you're a patient who's listening to this, get yourself a primary physical therapist who you trust, who you call first with your aches and pains and new acute injuries, okay? We are now trained to be able to pick up on red flags and know when it's necessary to get you in another person's hands, okay? It's time for us to start realizing and recognizing those things about our healthcare and how it's changing. We don't just need a primary care physician. We don't just need a dentist. We need to set ourselves up with a team of practitioners who are specialized in certain areas and can help us, navigate things as they come up. So, jumps off soapbox. All right, thanks.